Welcome to week 4 of our trip through the book of Obadiah. Just to recap, Obadiah is actually a prophecy against the people of Edom, or Esau, who had actually decided to side with the enemies of Israel when they had invaded, the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Egyptians. And actually, basically, despite the fact that they were the sons of Esau and Israel was the sons of Jacob, they had actually decided they were going to go against their kith and kin. It's an absolute travesty that you have a family that's so close effectively attacking each other. And what was worse was that the Edomites were kicking the Israelites when they were down. So that fills it in, and Obadiah has got some very serious words to tell them about it. It's a very odd little book in the Bible. It's one of the shortest of the prophets. It's only one chapter long, and yeah, there's a lot to unpack in the middle of it. But particularly, I'm going to look at 2 verses, which are verses 7 and 8. And the title of this particular thought or talk is actually Jesus is Wisdom. And that sounds a bit strange, having put the background in there to what Obadiah was saying and to whom he was saying it. The 2 verses I'm wanting to focus on is actually Obadiah 7 and 8. So that's Obadiah chapter 1, Obadiah 7 to 8. And in there, the Lord actually says to the Edomites, all your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. Your trusted friends will set traps for you and you won't even know about it. At the time, not a single wise person will be left in the whole of the land of Edom. For on the mountains of Edom, I will destroy everyone who has understanding. So what the Lord is saying through Obadiah is sort of twofold. Number one is the people that you think you can rely on are going to turn against you. The people that have promised you peace are going to deceive you. And people that you've trusted were going to set traps for you, even though you don't know it. In other words, you turn on your kith and kin across the other side of the Jordan, expect the same sort of treatment back. And then the killing words are this: at the time not a single wise person will be held in the land of Edom. For in the mountains of Edom I will destroy everyone who has understanding. What Obadiah is essentially saying is the wise people who should be telling you not to do what you're doing aren't going to be there. There's nobody there who's going to be able to sit there and go, stop, this is not good. This is not what you should be doing. You're just going to ignore them, and by ignoring them and turning your desires on people that actually maybe say what you want to hear as distinct to what they should hear, in other words, lack wisdom, there's going to be no understanding. You're not going to understand that the people that you think that you can rely on are actually going to stab you in the back. And this is actually where you can start unpacking the whole idea of wisdom. The simplest way I can describe wisdom in my mind is that wisdom is something that you can acquire. It's a skill you can develop. It is something that can be taught, but it's something that you yourself have to know. And the best way of thinking about it is almost like a toolkit. You could have the latest, greatest toolkit with all the spanners, all the screwdrivers, all the power tools you want. But if you don't know how to use them, they're useless. Essentially, if you have all the intelligence in the world, you have all the tools, and you don't know how to use them, they are useless. Whereas the flip side of it is, if you can think through, if you can demonstrate wisdom, if you have learned how to be thoughtful, how to think things through, how not to just grab for the obvious tool, but to actually think through what you're going through, think through what is happening, then you can do the job. Growing up on a farm, it was sort of the sort of thing that we had to do quite a lot, we couldn't just run down the shops to get the missing tool. We had to find some way of repairing something that had broken in the middle of the field to enable us to finish doing the harvest, or enable us to finish feeding the animals, or enable us just to carry on with the work of farming. We could not rely on somebody just down the road to fix it. We had to learn how to fix, make, mend and undo, to use our initiative. In other words, we had wisdom to use the tools that we had. So intelligence is one thing, but wisdom is how to do that. So you might not be the brightest person in the sense that you don't have all the best qualifications, or you don't have a gift of words, or you don't have a gift of reading or whatever. But what you do have, if you can use it well and you can make the best of it, you are being wise. That is wisdom. It is understanding what you can do. It's moving from having something that's simple, something that is given to you, that you just follow the instructions, to actually understanding what is going on. Another analogy would be the difference between someone who just follows a recipe and someone who understands how cooking happens to produce that gorgeous and wonderful meal. That's the difference between a good cook, or shall we, a cook, and a good chef. I should know. I'm not a good chef. I'm okay at cooking, but I know someone who can equally and demonstrates that sort of knowledge, that understanding, that wisdom in the kitchen. So what does this do? How does this tie in with what we're looking at here? Well, if you turn quickly to Proverbs, there's a lot of wisdom within Proverbs, and the one I actually wanted to look at in particular was in Proverbs 2. And this is what the prophetess, the wisdom, says. Now, again, I'll just give you a little bit of context. The book of Proverbs is a whole series of wise sayings, but the main character that drives that is the personification of wisdom, and the personification of wisdom is a young woman. So wisdom is seen in the Bible as a woman who speaks wisely into situations, and this woman speaks through the book of Proverbs, and the words that she says in chapter 2 is, "My child, listen to what I say and treasure my commands. Tune your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek for them like hidden treasures. Then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you will gain knowledge of God. For the Lord grants wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding." The Edomites thought that they were clever. The Edomites thought that they were cute. They could just fill in with follow the big bully, right? Be part of that group and stand at the edge and then take whatever they could out of it. That is not wise. Listening to the bully is not wise. Listening to God is wise. Asking for understanding is wise. Instead of actually doing what they should have done, which is get on their knees and pray to the God of their forefathers, Abraham and Isaac, they chose instead to follow the lead of the people, those very same people who were going to destroy their cousins across the Jordan. Wisdom was destroyed. So, having talked very briefly about wisdom, what has this got to do with Jesus? Well, there's an interesting part in the life of Jesus in his ministry very, very early on when he returns to Nazareth. And you'll find the story actually in Mark chapter 6. So I'm going to read from Mark chapter 6, 1 to 5. Jesus left that part of the country and returned with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath he began teaching in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed, and they asked, "Where did he get all this wisdom and the power to perform such miracles?" Then they scoffed. "He's just the carpenter, the son of Mary and the brother of James, Joseph, Judith and Simon, and his sisters live right here among us." And they were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, A prophet is honoured everywhere except in his own hometown, among his own relatives and family. Because of that, he was not able to do anything there. The miracles among them, except to place his hands on a few sick people and to heal them. So effectively, they refused to try and understand what was going on. They refused to seek the wisdom of the Lord. They weren't looking for insights. They had already dismissed him. They dismissed him because he was just Joseph's lad, right? How often do we take the mundane, the simple, the obvious, the things that we know for granted, but worse than that, actually pull them down? You could say it's almost a national pastime here in the Isle of Man. You talk about people and you go, oh, you know, that's so-and-so's lad, that's so-and-so's lass. You know what they're like. And you've already put them in a box before you've got to know them, before you've got to understand them. You have already got a preconceived idea. Now here's a thought for you, just as an aside. Have you ever thought where the word prejudice comes from? Prejudice can be best described as prejudging. And if you have prejudged someone based on their background, their nationality, their race, their whatever, you have prejudged them, and therefore you are showing prejudice. And that's not a good thing, because you will not be able to understand them and get to know them and get to have the joy of meeting another human being with all their excitement and interest in that you get from knowing somebody that's new to you, getting to know other people, getting to get in depth in with them, you know, building up a good relationship. That's essentially what the boys did in Nazareth. Not just the boys, but everybody. They just basically went, you know, that lad, he's the carpenter. You know, what does he think he is? You know, they're probably sort of saying, well, you know, he built my bed, or he repaired the roof, or built a bit of the boat, or something like that. And they have just completely ignored the opportunity that they have. Arguably, that's exactly what the Edomites were doing when they looked down the hill at Israel. Instead of seeing Israel for who they were, they had already prejudged the outcome. They had prejudged what they were going to do. They lacked understanding and they didn't pursue it. So just to circle round again, what the Lord says in Obadiah 7 and 8 is, all your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. Your trusted friends will set traps for you, and you won't even know about it. And at that time, not a single wise person will be left in the whole of the land of Edom. That is quite scary. We live in a modern society where we have a lot of information thrown at us very rapidly from many, many sources. We have people trying to persuade us that their view is right. They are people that are trying to persuade us that other people are wrong, that source of information is not correct. We actually have a situation where we have almost too much information. And one of the things we need to learn and we need to teach ourselves is understanding. And from understanding comes wisdom, and from that wisdom becomes our knowledge of God. And when we really, really know God, we will fear him, not in a I'm too scared to come out of the cave type fearing, but a fearing as in respect, as in really understanding who he is and what he has done. And I must admit that is absolutely mind-blowing when we'll get there. And in our modern society, we have to, more than ever, this day and age, do what wisdom says in the book of Proverbs. We need to tune our ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. We need to cry out for insight and ask for understanding. We need to search for wisdom and understanding like we would search for silver or gold, something that we desperately, desperately want. That is how we have to approach this. So, Jesus, who had the most amazing wisdom, So much so that the people in his hometown couldn't accept it. How can he have this sort of wisdom, is effectively what they're saying. We cannot believe that the carpenter really has the forethought, the understanding. And by that, they didn't see what happened. We need to be those people that actually keep our minds open, we concentrate, we test things, we check things, we keep searching for the wisdom that can only come from God, the understanding that can only come from God, and the fear of the Lord will be the beginning of that wisdom. For out of God's mouth comes knowledge and understanding. So Jesus is wisdom. What can we do with this? Well, number one is the next time we see something on YouTube or on the news, I'm not saying we shouldn't discount it or disbelieve it, but we need to ask ourselves some serious questions. Does this fit in with our understanding? We need to meet with each other. We need to meet in groups. I keep talking about this idea of iron sharpening iron. Iron doesn't sharpen iron if you're in a kitchen. You use a steel or a stone to sharpen iron. But the image is that we are all knives. We are all needing sharpening, and we'll all sharpen each other. So from each other we will gain wisdom and understanding, and to each other we will impart wisdom, knowledge and understanding. And we all, as long as we continue to seek God and seek his knowledge, his wisdom and his understanding, we will grow in faith. And through that we can then share it, and we can extend it, and we can expand it, and we can bring other people in to share that wisdom and that understanding. Because actually, if we fear life, if we always looking over our shoulder after people that we think are going to entrap us, if we're scared, we are not trusting in God. And we have to learn to trust in God. And we do that by following him, and we do that by seeking out his wisdom. So, some things to take away for you this week. First question is, am I still seeking knowledge? Am I still seeking wisdom? Second question is, where do I get that from? And have I built that into a habit into my life? Do I do a daily reading? Do I do a daily study? Do I meet with fellow Christians and even our friends who are not necessarily churchgoers, not necessarily believers? Do we meet with them? Do we talk with them? Do we spend time with them to gain better understanding? And do we always take that back to God, to Jesus on the cross? Do we put it at the foot of the cross and check it and test it? My final reading is actually from the Acts of the Apostles. And in the Acts of the Apostles, Paul finds himself driven from a city to a place called Berea. And in Berea, he discovers that people are willing to sit down and listen to what he has to say. And they've got so they're open to hear what he's going to say. They've not closed their minds to it. They've not done effectively what Edom did and said, no, that's the side we're on. We're not interested. They didn't do what the Nazarites did to Jesus when he turned up and said, nah, you're just a carpenter. They actually listened to what was being said, but they didn't just listen to it. They went away and checked it. They discussed it. They studied it. And Luke, when he's writing Acts, describes them as being of more noble character. I want to be a Berean. I don't know about you. I want to be that person that actually looks and studies and understands. So that takes us to the end of Obadiah. It's an interesting bounce through. I hope that you've got a lot from this. The recordings tapes, that shows my age. The recordings will be on YouTube, so you can come back to them again and study them and look at them as a set. And hopefully you'll get a lot from them. And then next month we're on to something new. And I'm glad that you're taking time out. We will be meeting next Sunday all together at the church at 11 o'clock. If you can make it, please do that. That is Sunday the 2nd of October. And we look forward to seeing you then.